When was the last time you went camping? In this episode, you'll learn camping vocabulary and find out what it's like to camp in Europe.
Welcome to Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And if you are a new listener to the show, you're welcome. And if you have come back to listen to us again, why?
Because we're great.
No, seriously, thanks for listening. With over 45 years of teaching between us, Reza and I are going to help you grow your grammar, vocalize your vocabulary, and improve your pronunciation. Perfect your pronunciation. Let's begin this week with an audio message from Victoria, who works at an airport. I think she works as ground staff, which means she speaks to people on the ground, not in the air, in the aeroplane. So here's Victoria.
Hi, Reza. Hi, Greg. I'm Victoria and I'm working at the airport. My colleagues and I have a question because we can reach an agreement. How is the correct way to ask developed questions? To a passenger, of course. And have you checked online? Have you checked in online? Or have you done checking online? By the moment, our option is going through the line and ask to the passengers, check it online, but I know this is not the correct way. Thank you for your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for sending in your question. One or two things before we answer your question about checking in. You said, how is the correct way? That's not correct. What you can say is using correct as an adjective and say what is the correct way. Okay, so not how, but what. What is the correct way? Or you can use correctly, the adverb, and you can say with how you say, how do you say correctly? So one or the other, but don't mix them. What is the correct way to say? Or how do you say correctly in English? Any comments, Reza?
Well, I think it's best if we just tell you the right way rather than go over your questions. You can say, have you checked in online? That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
You can also say, have you done online check-in? That's also correct.
Yep.
But notice the word in. Have you checked in online? Have you done online check-in? Because to check is not the same as check-in. Craig, what would you say is the difference?
Well, to check is comprobar in Spanish. So can you check my homework or can you check for any mistakes? The phrasal verb to check in is facturar if you're at an airport, or registrarse if you're going to a hotel, for example. So you check in at a hotel, you check in for your flight at the check-in desk. So again, as Reza said, you can ask, have you checked in online or have you done online check-in? And remember the intonation. If you're speaking to customers, to sound more polite, make sure your voice has a lot of intonation in it. So have you checked in online? Make sure your voice goes up. Have you checked in online? Or have you done online check-in? Make sure your voice goes high and you sound much more polite to the customer.
And Craig, what do you do when you leave a hotel for the last time?
You mean the opposite of check-in?
Yep.
Check out.
You can also check out of a hotel.
Absolutely.
But we don't use check out for flying. It doesn't apply. But for hotels, check-in is the opposite of check out. However, there's another meaning of check out. Have you checked out the new James Bond film? That means, have you seen it? Have you seen a trailer? Do you know about it? Have you checked it out? Have you had a look at it to see if you like it or not? That's also to check out.
So you can say to your friends, have you checked out this great podcast by Reza and Craig? Have you checked this out yet? Next, we have a question from Flavia from Nicaragua, who asked this question on the website. Reza, would you like to read it?
Hi, Reza and Craig. I think is difficult. You need to add Flavia it. I think it is difficult for me, it's better, to use the present simple to talk about the future. For example, when Reza stays at his mom's house, he'll be tidy. In Spanish, I say, cuando esté en la casa de mamá, o cuando me quede en la casa de mamá, seré ordenado. I don't say in Spanish, cuando estar, you wrote, Flavia? Maybe you mean cuando estoy en casa de mamá, seré ordenada. It sounds weird. For that reason, I have a problem to use the present simple to talk about the future. It's new for me. Well, Flavia, I don't 100% understand what you're trying to say in Spanish, but I think I basically understand your question, which is, when do you use the present in English to refer to the future? I think that's what she's really asking, right?
Well, I think she's really asking about the first conditional, although to speak about something connected to that for a second, you can use the present simple to speak about the future when you're speaking about timetables and schedules. For example, my flight leaves at 10 in the morning tomorrow, or my lesson begins at 6 this afternoon. So when you're speaking about schedules and that kind of timetabling with buses, flights, trains, school, colleges, that kind of thing, you can use present simple for the future. But I think Flavia's question has more to do with using the first conditional, and where in Spanish you'd use the subjuntivo. In the if clause, in English you use present simple. So, for example, when I have enough money, I'll buy a new phone. So in Spanish, maybe you'd say cuando tenga, which will be the subjuntivo. Compraré, I'll buy, that's the same, I will buy a new phone. So what Flavia's saying is, why don't we say when I will have enough money? Because that's in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that? I think that's her question.
Yeah, but Flavia, isn't it the same in Spanish? You say, cuando tengo dinero en el futuro, blah, blah, blah. But you're talking about the future. In Spanish, you don't say cuando tendré dinero. In Spanish, you say cuando tenga dinero. So in Spanish, you use a subjunctive, but it's present subjunctive. In English, we use present, but we don't use subjunctive because we don't really have much of a subjunctive in English. But it's very similar. And it's also very common with other time expressions, like when your father gets home, he'll be very cross. My mum said to me.
Cross
when
means angry.
Angry.
Yeah.
So when your father gets home, that's going to be in the future. Or I won't help you until you are nice to me. Until, I mean in the future. Hasta que no te comportes bien conmigo. So Spanish, again, you use subjunctive.
Yeah. We don't use the subjunctive very often in English, and we've spoken about this before. So where in Spanish it's more common, then you're just going to have to learn, Flavia, when you'd use, for example, present simple. It's a common mistake to want to put will in that first clause with words like when, until, if. But you must remember the will is always in the second clause. I hope that helps. And remember that we did do a full podcast on the first and second conditional. That was way back in episode 11. So to listen to that, Flavia, go to inglespodcast.com/11. And Flavia finishes her question with this comment. I know I have to think in English, but how can I think in English if I only know how to think in Spanish? Good question.
Patience, Flavia. You need time.
Patience, time, work, and practice. Those 4 things I think you need.
Because you've heard me and Craig making plenty of mistakes in Spanish. We don't speak perfect
especially
Spanish,
Craig.
you know? But I don't know about you, Craig, but I do sometimes think in Spanish.
Yeah, I do now, but it takes, as you said, it takes time, it takes patience. You have to keep on studying, exposing yourself to English, practice as much as you can. With time, you'll begin to automatically think in English and speak in English and use these set phrases, these fixed trozos de lenguaje, these phrases like until I see, until I go, when I have. You'll automatically use the present simple because it will become part of your immediate speech. So give it time, give it patience, and don't give up. Don't stop. Keep working.
We have some more feedback, this time some audio feedback from Juan from Jaén.
Fantastic. Let's listen to Juan.
Hello, Russia and Craig. I'm Juan from Jaén, and I'm glad to be here again. I want to ask you a question. What is the difference between the next two sentences? I like cooking and I like to cook. Congratulations for your podcast and your page on internet. They are very useful tools for people who are studying English. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, Juan. Thanks for your message. Reza, that old chestnut.
That old chestnut.
Any comments?
That old chestnut. A chestnut is una castaña or castaño. Sorry, castaño. I never remember which one's the tree and which one's the fruit. Castaña, I think, is the fruit, isn't it? I don't know. Chestnut. But we're not really talking about trees and fruit. We're talking about un viejo problema. We said in English, that old chestnut. Well, you know what, Juan, that's a very good question. They can be more or less the same.
Yeah, they could mean the same. No difference.
But we did talk about them in episode 40. So if you go to inglespodcast.com/40, you'll hear us explain that in a bit more detail. But basically, when we're talking about things in general, like I love cooking. I cook a lot. I love cooking. So in general, I love cooking. ing, I love plus ing, cooking. But if you talk about things which are more particular or idiosyncratic or a very specific situation, then you can use infinitive. For example, I love to cook very, very early on a Sunday morning while my girlfriend is out and impress her when she arrives. That's something very particular. So I love to cook, the infinitive.
There's usually a reason when you use the infinitive. There's a reason for doing it. There's a result that you usually enjoy. And it's usually together with the word because. With Reza's example, I like to cook very early in the morning because I have more time to do other things. An example I often use is to get up early in the morning. Most people don't like getting up early, which means they don't like the activity of getting up early. Usually people don't like getting up early. That's the gerund. But I can say with the infinitive, I like to get up early because I can have a shower, I can have a good breakfast, I can listen to the news, I can wake up and prepare myself for the day. So I like the result of getting up early, not the activity of getting up early. That's one possible difference. But as Reza said, in many examples, it doesn't really matter. You can say, yeah, I like cooking, or yeah, I like to cook. But if you say because, then you'd use the infinitive probably. So you'd say, I like to cook because I know the ingredients that are going in the food. And now we have an audio message from Gabriela and her mum, all the way from Peru.
Hey Reza and Craig, well, this is a live gig for you guys. My mom plays the flute and I wonder if you guys know the name of this Peruvian famous melody. Well, enjoy it. hope you like it, guys. Well, I'll be back soon.
Reza, did you recognize the song?
Actually, yes, I did. I did recognize it.
What's it called?
El Condor Pasa.
Yep. I didn't know the name, but I did recognize it as a popular song back from the 70s, was it?
Or 60s, maybe 60s or 70s.
Yeah, or maybe 60s from Simon and Garfunkel.
That's right. They used a version of it in one of their albums. That's when I first heard it.
And I think your mum played it very, very well. So thanks so much for sending that to us. We really enjoyed listening to it.
Well done to your mum. Greg, we have a voice message this time from all the way from Argentina, from Marcos Forgiarini, and he asks us about camping.
Yes, this gave us the idea for this episode. So thank you, Marcos. Let's listen to Marcos's voice message.
Hi Reza, hi Craig. This is Marcos from Argentina. My English isn't very well, but it's improving step by step, and you two helped me a lot. I wondered if you could talk about camping, some vocabulary, and what's camping in Europe like. Well, this is all for me at the moment. Bye.
So thank you, Marcos, for your voice message and for giving us the idea for this podcast. We did speak about holidays and travel in general. That was back in episode 156. So to listen to that, go to inglespodcast.com/156. But I don't think we've spoken about camping specifically, have we, Reza?
No, we haven't. And of course, it is an activity which requires very specific equipment.
And vocabulary.
So to go camping, probably the first thing you'll be interested in is a campsite. That is the place where you're going to sleep. A campsite. Now, don't make that typical Spanish mistake. Don't say a camping. No, that's wrong. You may say in Spanish un camping. Okay, in Spanish, but not in English. In English, it's a campsite.
Good point. And the activity camping, because it's an ing activity like trekking, running, skiing, climbing, you go. So it collocates with to go. So in the same way that you go jogging or you go surfing or windsurfing, you also go camping. And where do you go camping? Well, you go camping in Spanish, una tienda. Now, una tienda can be shop or tent, which always confuses me because, Reza, if I say to you in Spanish, voy a dormir en una tienda, maybe I'm sleeping in a shop, right? It could be. Could be.
But in English, they're different words.
Yep. So we're speaking about a tent, T-E-N-T. So you camp in a tent on a campsite.
Now, you've got your tent, you're on the campsite. What do you have to do? Well, you've got to put up or to pitch the tent. To put it up.
So that's the phrasal verb, yeah? To put up.
To put up, to erect it, to put it in position. And then when you're finished, you'll have to take down the tent when you're going home. Put up or pitch a tent, and the opposite, to take down a tent.
And when you put up your tent, you probably need to put something on the ground because, especially in the UK, it might be wet. Maybe it rained. So you need something to protect yourself from the wet, damp ground. Damp means un poco mojado, D-A-M-P. Maybe the ground is damp. You need something called a ground sheet. One word, it's a compound noun. Ground sheet, a ground sheet. So you put the ground sheet down first when you put up your tent.
Another compound noun is something that you might need, which is a fly sheet. Craig, what's a fly sheet?
Well, some people might think it's to protect you against the flies, but it actually protects you more against the rain. It's the cover that goes on top of the tent and it's waterproof. So no water goes through into the actual material of the tent. So the fly sheet is the sheet that goes on top to protect you against the weather.
One thing you'll need definitely to have with you in a campsite is ropes. ROPES, ropes, cuerdas. But there are specific types of ropes for camping. Craig, what camping ropes have you got?
Yeah, they're called guy ropes, GUY. Maybe you heard the word guy for man, tío, guy. But a guy rope is a particular rope that you use for camping, and it ties the tent to the tent pegs. The tent pegs are the pieces of metal or wood that go into the ground so that the tent does not fall over. So tent pegs, or sometimes stakes, a stake in the ground, that's what you tie or connect your guy rope to.
Did you say steaks? Like a beef steak, is that Craig?
Different spelling, same pronunciation. Stakes for the ground, STAKES.
Aha. Another thing you'll have to put in the ground is your tent pole. POLE, pole. The tent pole, will that be could be in the middle of a tent if it's a small one, but probably for most tents, there'll be a pole at each end of the tent, which is the main support, apoyo, for the tent. So to get the tent pegs and the tent pole or poles into the ground, you'll need a mallet. MALLET. A mallet is like a big hammer, martillo, but a big one and possibly made of wood or maybe rubber these days to be able to hammer, to hit them, the poles perhaps and the pegs to get them into the ground so they stick para que se queden. Now, Craig, let's carry on camping and let's talk about some more material that we're going to need. Well, you'll want to be comfortable, so you'll need a foam mattress or an air bed, perhaps. So foam is espuma is one meaning of foam, but that isn't what we mean here. A foam mattress is one of those mattresses, un colchón mattress, which is very soft.
And that's the thing that really made camping almost enjoyable for me, because I suffer from a bad back and I always had a problem sleeping on those very, very thin foam mattresses. And when I discovered I could get an airbed or a thicker mattress, then it became possible for me to have a good night's sleep or a comfortable night's sleep in a tent. So yeah, foam mattresses or airbeds are really comfortable now. And when I was younger, they were hard and not very comfortable at all.
Of course, you have to remember, if you're going to bring an air bed, you need to inflate it, inflar. You need to inflate it with air. So you'll have to bring a pump with you to get the air and pump, P-U-M-P, to bombear el aire. Don't forget that.
Absolutely. And you're going to need a sleeping bag, saco de dormir, a sleeping bag for your tent. And I would suggest a thick one if you're camping in the UK. But I'm not sure if you need something to protect you from mosquitoes in the UK. A mosquito net protects you from mosquitoes, maybe in some areas of the British Isles, but probably not. What do you think?
I wouldn't bother with a mosquito net in the UK, no. Craig, have you ever slept under a mosquito net?
Yep, I have a few times. It's very common in outside of Europe, if you're traveling in Central or South America or in Asia or Africa, to have mosquito nets, and also insect repellent. Insect repellent is what you spray on your body so that the insects don't bite you. Insect repellent, because it repels the insects.
Now, a tip, una pista, un consejo, a tip. I wouldn't bother with mosquito repellent specifically in the UK because there aren't many mosquitoes. But I would use another type of insect repellent, particularly if you go to Scotland. In Scotland, a big problem is an insect called a midge, or midgie, as people like to say. M-I-D-G-E or M-I-D-G-I-E. Scottish midges are infamous.
Do they bite you?
They bite. They're very, very small, much smaller than a mosquito, but they do bite. They don't carry any diseases. They're not going to give you any disease, unlike mosquitoes, which of course can give you very serious diseases.
Malaria, yeah.
Malaria and stuff. Midges, no, but oh boy, can they annoy you.
Are they
anyone.
especially a problem for campers?
Yes, and particularly in Scotland. For some reason, there are a hell of a lot of them in Scotland. I speak from my own personal experience, and it pays, vale la pena, it pays to protect yourself against Scottish midges. Yeah, I've warned you now. If you go to Scotland and you get bitten by midges, don't say I didn't warn you.
Don't say Reza didn't warn you. What you will almost definitely need if you're planning to do your own cooking while you're camping is camping gas. So you buy camping gas and then you need a gas canister. Remember the word canister. So a gas canister or a refill. You need a spare canister in case your gas runs out or finishes.
So you explained canister as like a big can then. That's a good way to remember it, isn't it? It's kind of like a big can.
Yep. If you remember the word can, like can of Coke or can of Pepsi, then a canister is a can of gas.
Gas canister. Now, one of the lovely things about camping is you get to light a campfire. A fire beside the camp to keep you warm at night and perhaps to cook on. Campfire. Lovely. Craig, I have a few nice experiences of sitting around a campfire. It's something I wish I could do more often. Have you ever sat around a campfire?
On occasion, not very often, because I'm not a huge fan of camping. It's not my cup of tea, which means I don't like it very much. But I have sung around the campfire. I have cooked sausages around the campfire and had some fun.
What about that thing that they certainly do in American films? I don't know if they do it in real life. Have you roasted marshmallows on a campfire?
Once I had marshmallows, but not roasted on a campfire. They were cooked or roasted in someone's house on their real fire. So I've tasted them once, but not while I was camping. Have you? Have you tasted them?
No, and I don't really want to because I've eaten marshmallows from a packet and they're pretty disgusting, I found.
When you do go camping, it's a good idea to take a torch, Torch, which is linterna in Spanish. The Americans don't say torch, do they, Reza? What's the American word for torch?
Flashlight is more typical in American English. Torch or flashlight. Another very useful piece of equipment is a knife. Usually we call it a pen knife.
Navaja.
So pen knife, and there's a specific type of pen knife called a Swiss Army knife, which is very useful. The Swiss Army knives are the pen knives which have many, many different uses, like 10 or 15 or 20 different uses. They have lots of blades, hojas, which you open up, and you've got a pair of scissors, tijeras, you've got pliers, alicates, and lots of different things. That's a useful piece of equipment when you go camping.
Now, you need to keep all these things, your insect repellent, your penknife, your torch or flashlight. You need to keep all these things and carry them with you. So you need a backpack, which is mochila. Backpack, or you could also say rucksack. Both of those are compound nouns. So take a backpack.
Now, when you're camping, particularly in countries like the UK or Ireland, you're probably going to be exposed to the elements. You'll hear that expression a lot, to be exposed to the elements. The elements means the weather, the elements of rain, fire, wind. So be careful to protect yourself against the elements.
So take some extra batteries with you, or spare batteries, you could say. S-P-A-R-E. Spare means extra. So take some spare batteries for your torch or any other device that needs batteries.
An absolutely essential piece of equipment, because it could be life-saving, is your first aid kit. Primeros auxilios. El equipaje de primeros auxilios. First aid kit.
And in the UK, you'll almost definitely need waterproof clothes, warm clothes and warm clothing, especially if you're not going in the summer. Obviously, the summer has better weather, and we still suggest waterproof clothes. Anything that's waterproof is contra del agua, contra la lluvia. So you can have a waterproof watch, waterproof shoes, waterproof jacket, etc. And if you're trekking with your tent and your backpack and all your equipment, and you're not exactly sure where you're going and you're doing a lot of walking, take a compass. Compass is brújula in Spanish. Compass, C-O-M-P-A-S-S, although these days most people have a map or a GPS on their phone. So make sure you have internet connection on your mobile phone, get a local SIM card or a local phone, and then you'll have GPS and you'll have your map with you all the time and you won't get lost.
Another piece of equipment which could really save your life is a box of matches. Matches are cerillas. Or a lighter, mechero. Because if it's very cold and you need to light a fire, campfire, they might literally save your life.
So you'll be camping, cooking your own food, and when you cook your own food, that's called self-catering. So this kind of holiday is a self-catering holiday. Of course, you don't need to take a tent. You can also rent an on-site caravan or a bungalow or a chalet or a cabin. And these are all places with a hard roof, not a tent, a hard roof to protect you from the elements and to keep you out of the rain. Many campsites in the UK have the option of more protection, especially if you're traveling out of season. And these options, caravans, bungalows, chalets, or cabins.
Of course, you could alternatively kind of bring everything with you in a vehicle. In other words, you could bring a caravan with you. You could tow, T-O-W, tow the caravan. That means connect it to your car. Or you could drive a motor caravan. Or if you want to make life even easier and you don't want to tow the caravan separately, you could buy a motor caravan.
Or rent.
So that means that the vehicle includes the caravan. So obviously that's quite a big vehicle you're driving there. The Americans call it an RV.
Yeah.
But I never remember what RV stands for. What does it stand for?
Recreational vehicle.
Okay.
Which sounds a bit technical. I think caravan is much more romantic. When I think of caravan, I think of camels walking through the desert. I prefer the word caravan. But if you're traveling around North America, you'd rent an RV, a recreational vehicle. And because caravanning is an activity, again, the collocation to go caravanning. So you could say, I'm going caravanning in the UK this year.
Mm-hmm. There's a kind of a specialist motor caravan. I guess it is a motor caravan, but let's give it its own special mention. Campervan. For me, one of the greatest vehicles ever created.
Yeah, the famous Volkswagen campervan.
Volkswagen campervan.
And they're not too big. I mean, you said before that motor caravans can be big, and they can be. But these kind of small Volkswagen campervans tend to be smaller and easier to park in cities or towns, so you can move around a lot easier.
So German, so well planned. Yeah, it doesn't use up too much fuel. Big enough for people to sleep in, not too big enough so
almost
you can't manage
a car,
them.
so you can. Yeah.
Not quite. Those Germans, they know how to solve problems, don't they? They really do. Superb engine. I know people who are driving. They own. That means poseer. They own and they drive campervans, which were made in the 1960s, and the engine still works perfectly.
Yeah.
You can't say that about many cars. Nobody has a Porsche from the 60s with the engine still working perfectly, but they do have campervans with the engine working perfectly.
Absolutely. Definitely. Last on our list, last but not least, which means it's the last thing, but it is not the least important. It's definitely not. On a campsite, you need to know where the toilet block is. That's block, B-L-O-C-K. So the toilet block is where you go for a shower and to use the bathroom or use the toilet. So that's another thing to think about when you pitch your tent. Where's the toilet block? Do I have to walk for half an hour with my torch at 1 o'clock in the morning to find the toilets? You don't want to do that. Make sure you're quite near to the toilet block.
And if it's not a very good campsite, you might find that the toilet is blocked. Very often happens in a campsite. If a toilet is blocked, using block here as a verb to block a toilet, that means the water is not running through it properly. It's very common in campsites, let's be honest.
Yeah. So I think coming from Argentina, I think Marcos would be interested to know what we think of camping in the UK if he's thinking of coming over to Europe to do it. I mean, you said blocked toilets. That is what I remember from when I went camping with my parents maybe 30 years ago. But I don't think do you have any experience with camping recently in the UK?
No, to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience camping. But the general consensus, what most people say, is that the best campsites in Europe are in France.
Yeah, I think most people agree with that. The French really know how to make camping a pleasurable, comfortable experience.
What about Spanish campsites, Craig? What do you know of them?
I've stayed on 2 or 3 campsites in the south of Spain, and they were okay. But I think they're definitely much better in France. And probably in the UK, I'd say they were a mixture. So in the UK, if I remember correctly, you would find some very, very nice and very good campsites in the UK, and maybe others that are not so nice. In Spain, I didn't have any bad experiences, but they weren't particularly comfortable. Certainly not. The facilities were not as good as the ones I've stayed in France. What's your opinion?
I've only stayed in a campsite once in Spain, a few times in France, and the one in Spain was okay. Yeah. And in France, there was more variety. I found in France there were cheaper ones, there were better ones, and you can just tell that the French take it a lot more seriously. Yeah. They're really into their camping.
Very nice toilet facilities, very nice cafes and bars on the campsite.
Yeah.
All that hot water with no problems. So, Marcos, if you're thinking of coming to Europe, try the UK. In a second, I'll recommend some websites that you could use as a reference and to look for campsites. But I think in Spain, I would suggest possibly only going to campsites as a way to travel inexpensively and to get to particular areas of interest that would be good. One place I did really enjoy camping was in the Alpujarras in Andalusia, near Granada. The Alpujarras is a mountain range in the south of Spain, and there are beautiful, beautiful places in the Alpujarras for camping. So I definitely recommend there, but only in the summer.
And Marcus and any listener, we'd love to hear what your experiences are of South American campsites. Have you ever been camping in South America, Craig?
No, I haven't, but I'd be interested to hear what it's like.
I wonder what they're like in Argentina. Can you let us know, Marcus?
Yeah, please tell us. For reference, I have 1 or 2 websites that look very, very good, very comprehensive and very useful. So I'll quickly tell you the names of these websites for camping in the UK. And of course, the links will be in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/176. So the first one is ukcampsite.co.uk, ukcampsite.co.uk. The second one, campsites.co.uk, very easy, campsites with an s.co.uk. And the final one, pitch up. So as Reza said before, to pitch a tent. So we've got pitch up, pitchup.com/campsites. And that last one, pitch up, covers the UK, Europe, and the Americas. So it covers many, many different countries. And all of these sites have maps. So you choose the area you're interested in. You can see the campsites available in that area, with also reviews and information about each campsite and the prices. So very good websites.
So we're going to have to pack up. We're going to have to break camp. That's the opposite of pitch camp. We're going to have to break camp and go.
Yep.
Our time is up.
Take down the tent and head out the door.
But now it's your turn to practice your English. Have you ever been camping? Do you have any funny camping stories? Why not send us a voice message and practice some of the vocabulary we've just mentioned? You could send us a voice message on SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast.
Or you could send us an email with a comment or question to me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com.
Or belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you would like more detailed show notes, and there is news about our Patreon campaign coming very soon, so we have money saved up and we're going to start publishing more transcriptions. More news about that later. But go to patreon.com/Ingles podcast if you'd like to join our sponsors. Who are our lovely sponsors, Reza?
Pedro, Manuel García Betegón, Maite, Lara, Sara, Carlos, Zara, Mamen, Juan, Corey Finneran, Mariel, Jorge, Raúl López, I should say, Rafael, Manuel Tarazona, Agus, Nestor García Mañez from Nestorgm, Nestorgm.
Nestorgm.
Nestorgm, in other words, Luces Extrañas podcast, Juan Carlos, Rafa, Beatriz, José Luis, and Miren Full. Thank you to all of you.
Yes, thanks very much. Also, thanks to Arminda from Madrid, Alberto from Granada, and Angelica Bello from Madrid, who have been transcribing for you past podcasts. We now have full transcriptions for episodes 131 to 142 and episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, and Angelica has now finished 5. So those first 5 have been transcribed. In next week's episode, Reza, what's the subject?
One of the most frustrating and boring things you can do in your life. Write in an email to a technical support team.
Thanks to Mamin for that question. We'll be speaking all about writing emails to technical support next week on our podcast. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.